Deconverted Man here. What is anything at all? What is it? What really is something? If I ask you to describe to me a cat, how would you do it? You might say, well, it's a mammal, and it's a feline, and it has a head with pointy ears and whiskers and perhaps a tail and 4 legs and a body. But a cat is still a cat without any legs or a tail or whiskers, and in fact, if we took everything out of the cat and just had its brain, we would have what? Would we still have a cat if we kept the brain alive? In fact, why is keeping it alive a prerequisite at all? If I have just the skeleton of a cat, it's still a cat. I didn't say if it was alive or dead after all. So, what part is the cat? Could any particular bone be a cat? Or is it only when it's configured into a certain structure that it's still a cat? But if that's the case, then why is the skeleton of a cat, and a cat isn't, if it's just the brain, or just the organs without anything else attached, no flesh or muscles? Is that still a cat? Is a particle from a cat still a cat? At what point does it stop being a cat, or at what point did it start to become a cat? And if we can't really answer that question, then what does that mean for everything and anything at all? If I said to describe this ketchup bottle, well, you could tell me the ingredients that are inside, as well as the bottle's configuration, its shape, size, weight, and so on and so forth. But even when it's empty, it's still a bottle, but it's not a ketchup bottle, even if it says ketchup on it. At what point did it stop being a ketchup bottle? Well, when I got rid of all the ketchup inside of it, right? But why? And how does that work? And if that's true for the ketchup bottle, why isn't it true of the cat? If I get rid of everything inside the cat that made the cat a cat, well, it's still a cat because I have a cat bones at the very least, and the rest of it, well, that was a cat too, and in fact, it is still a cat. It's just a dead cat, or pieces of a cat, parts and components of a cat. But when we say certain words like cat, what we're actually doing is communicating with each other what is known as a universalistic idea. You and I both will picture in our head a cat. Now, that can't be a universal cat. It has to be a particular type of cat. It can be a drawn outline of a cat, a cartoon cat, or maybe your own cat. But it can't just be the idea of cat. Maybe you picture the word cat, but that's not really a cat. At least, I don't think it is. Is it? If we can disassemble anything into its components and say, well, it's not a cat anymore, then what is anything? Because we can do that with anything, and then it's not what it was before. If I start disassembling this walk into its components, when does it stop being a walk? When I can no longer recognize it as a walk? But what made it a walk in the first place? And who decided? And why? These sort of problems are part of the natural language problem that we have in, well, natural language. The ideas and concepts that we convey to each other that seem so simple and benign on the surface are actually very complicated. What does it mean to be a human? That's something that's extraordinarily difficult to answer. What is a painting? At what point did it become a painting? Is one brush stroke a painting, or does it have to have several? What's the difference between a painting and a painted wall? If I put a frame around a wall, can I call it a painting? There are many words that seem to defy our ability to describe them in an accurate and coherent method to each other, but we know it when we see it. We know it when we feel it, or touch it, or smell it, or taste it. This is a bird. Well, it's a picture of a bird, and it's a wooden picture of a bird. It's not even really a picture, it's a wood carving of a bird. But it's not a bird, it's a depiction of a bird. At what point did this wood carving become a depiction of a bird? Because I can pattern seek and understand that this is meant to be a bird, but what does that mean? Is it just wood and the bird is just in my head? Maybe. So I want you to think about what is anything and try to come to some sort of absolute description of, well, any given object or phenomenon, and deeply ask the question of whether or not you've really defined it or not. What is light? And if I turn it off, what is dark? What does it mean? Why does it mean what it means? How do we figure out at what point was it light and what point was it not light? Or is it so much of a gradient that we could never really say exactly when it was and when it wasn't? These sort of questions are not easy to answer. But you're going to answer them in the comments below, because that's the point of the video. Or you're not going to answer any of them. Whatever.